Yes, now, Minority Leader of the House of Delegates, getting ready for the General Assembly session, my good friend, David Toscano. Mr. Leader Toscano, great to have you with us. Merry Christmas.
Great to be back with you, John.
Now,
when you said 7 days, I almost hung up the phone and went out and shopped.
I know, it's like it just kind of snuck up on you. All of a sudden, it's 7 days away, and I still got a whole bunch of stuff I have to buy. I only have to buy for what? Yeah, I shouldn't say that. I've only had to buy for one person, the Fräulein. That's my wife, Ann. Right? She gets everything else. She has everything else. I got to buy for one person, and half the time I screw that up. So this year,
you'll be better this year.
This year,
hope springs eternal.
I'm determined to get ahead of it. I know I got a couple ideas of what she wants, and I can't say it on the air because she might be tuned in. But we're going to get the Fräulein some cool stuff. I got it all planned. I just got to find the time, but I'm going to do that. Leader Toscano, you're going into the General Assembly session in a couple weeks. We had a couple of your colleagues on earlier. We had Delegate Mark Keem on. Also, your caucus chairman, Scott Survell, on. This Joe Marissi situation is just a disaster. I mean, it doesn't look good for the state. I was telling the Delegate Keem earlier that I've got friends in Georgia, where I'm from, texting me and emailing me saying, oh, you think we're bad, you guys are a joke. What's the deal here?
Well, I think as your previous guest, I'm sure, relayed, I mean, he's been convicted of a pretty serious offense. Even though on its face it looks to be a misdemeanor, it's clearly very serious. And it's a kind of offense that a lot of us believe disqualifies him from serving in the General Assembly. Mm-hmm. It's a tragedy. Joe is a wonderful orator and feels passionately about a lot of things that would help his constituents, but he really, it's not the kind of offense that we can allow to have somebody be convicted of and serve in the General Assembly.
You made a statement from your caucus calling on Delegate Marissi to resign. I think that's certainly the right move. Governor McAuliffe did as well. He's supposed to make an announcement today. One would hope that he would just resign and this whole thing would go away, right?
I hope he's going to do the right thing. I mean, if he does resign now, it really will help his constituents a great deal because the potential exists that a special election can be called right away. They can get somebody in there to represent their interests right away, and it's a very smooth transition. But if he doesn't resign, we're facing the prospects of a removal action, and that is somewhat uncharted territory. I think probably Scott Survell related to you. It hasn't happened any time in recent history, and it's only happened several times in history. Mm-hmm. We can remove somebody with a supermajority vote, and I don't see that there's any way he can survive. So the best way for him to do this is to resign and do the right thing for his constituents and for the Commonwealth.
I think so. Let's hope that he makes the right decision today so everybody can move on. And he also has to get on with his situation and get things straightened out. Because when you get convicted of something like this, it isn't something you can just... You just don't get up the following day and pay a fine. So he's got to, I think, get his own life in order, right?
Right, and he needs to spare Virginia the prospect of watching the national people countrywide watching the transgressions of yet another elected official in our Commonwealth. We just really don't need that anymore. No,
I don't think we do, especially with the sentencing for Governor McDonald coming up on January 6th. And I got to be honest, Delegate Toscano, I can just share this with you, but every time I look at a calendar and it gets closer to January 6th, I just get this pain in my stomach because, those of us that worked with Governor McDonald, knew Governor McDonald, I've interviewed him on my show numerous times. I've been, with him. I've been in the mansion and I've been with him in Virginia Beach. And, to just look at the date and, he's going to get some serious time. I mean, it's so disturbing, isn't it?
It's a real tragedy, These are people we know and, we like. And yet it's so serious, there are consequences for that. It's just going to be very sad because it looks like he could get some pretty serious jail time. And the prospects of him serving in jail just are not appealing to anybody, regardless of your political stripe.
Exactly, and I think that's what I was saying. And, regardless if you liked his policies or didn't, Bob's a very nice guy, and he's a good father, and they made some bad decisions, obviously, but I think that's going to be a sad day for anybody in Virginia, because when you look at the Phil Hamilton sentence, you say to yourself, okay, Phil Hamilton, served on appropriations, got himself a job, a part-time job, showed up at the job, and he got 9.5. So I don't see how McDonald gets that much under that. I mean, I really think that's a precedent that is going to play into the whole sentencing.
No, I think you're right.
With Minority Leader of the House of Delegates in Virginia, David Toscano. And Mr. Leader, look ahead to 2015. We had this conversation 12 months ago. Medicaid expansion was the big issue. That was really on the table. No one knew what would happen. Now we kind of know what that script is going to be. It's not going to pass either chamber. So, looking ahead to 2015, having said that, what are your top priorities?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. What are my top priorities?
Yes, going into this
the first
general
thing we have to do is get a budget out that reflects our priorities. And for me, and I think for a lot of members of my caucus, they're really twofold. Investing in public education, both K through 12 and higher ed, as well as pre-K, and making sure that we put enough money in the budget to create economic opportunity throughout the Commonwealth for as many people as possible. And that includes investing in the Governor's Opportunity Fund, as he has suggested. That includes a really focused attempt to change the way we do workforce development in the Commonwealth, because we're going to be short people who are going to be able to work in some of these great industries that pay good wages, but they have to have credentials, and they have to learn what to do before they take those jobs. And we haven't been doing as good a job as we need to be doing there. And, we're laser focused on opportunity, and that comes down to investing in businesses and making sure that we have a great business climate, and investing in higher education and education at all levels.
Now, how are you going to do that when the day you get there, you guys are grappling with a $330 million shortfall right off the bat?
Well, we got a short-term problem and a long-term issue. And the short-term problem is, how do we get certain priorities in the budget that will help diversify our economy and create jobs? And I think the way to approach it is not simply by cutting the budget to cutting the budget in areas where we need to invest, but trying to find opportunities to find revenue. And I'm not talking about tax increases. There are no tax increases in this budget. There will be no tax increases that I think that the General Assembly or the Governor will approve. But there are places where we can find some money, and those places are in the form of these what they call tax preferences, which are baked into the code many years ago, and some of them have outlived their intended purpose. A tax preference, for I think most of your listeners would know this, these are breaks that are going in some cases to some of the largest companies in Virginia for purposes of creating jobs. Now, we know from studies that, take a specific one, the coal tax credit, which is probably $90 million a year. Studies have shown that tax credit really doesn't create many jobs.
Right.
And so if you're going to be nimble as a government, and if you're going to run government like a business in an entrepreneurial fashion, you take investments you put some places that don't work as well, and you redirect them other places. So the governor's proposed some cuts in some tax preferences so we can redirect that money to places where it's going to be more effectively used. And I think that's going to be a big issue in the General Assembly, because a lot of people, particularly in the Republican side, talk a lot about reducing tax preferences, but when push comes to shove, they don't do it. So the governor's thrown down the gauntlet and said, well, if things don't work the way they're intended to work, if you're a business person, you redirect the money. Now's the time to redirect the money into higher ed and other things that are going to help diversify our economy.
Well, if you are truly an ideological, limited government conservative like me, then having these obscene tax breaks for certain targeted interest groups make no sense, because it's the government getting involved, picking winners and losers in the economy. I mean, we've got one thing on the books which is totally obscene, which is if you buy a yacht over, I think, $350,000, you don't pay the sales tax on it. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, come on, that's like ridiculous.
Yeah, well, again, the true conservatives let the market work.
Right.
Now, I'm not a true conservative because I don't think the market always works in the way that you think it should. And so I think that there are appropriate times where you might try to assist certain things to get going so that then they can get up to scale and then the market can work. But I think this isn't a case, like, why do we have to encourage yacht production? What's that all about? And you have a series of these things that have been baked into the code over time because lobbyists or powerful interests have gotten them put into the code. And it's not like an appropriations process, which we do every year, and we evaluate how things are working or how they're not working. These are things that are in the code. They exist independent of the appropriations process. We don't get to review them every year, and so they keep taking money out of the other parts of the budget that could otherwise serve the core functions of government.
Mr. Minority Leader, let me ask you this. The $100 gift limit that the Republican caucus has just endorsed about 2 weeks ago, how do you stand on that?
I support it. I think it's very clear that we've got to do some additional things in the area of ethics reform to restore the public trust in their elected officials. I can say it's not easy to do, and even if you enact the best laws in the world, ultimately it's going to come down in a lot of respects to how people handle themselves, because it's hard to legislate all ethics. But at least we can tighten up some rules and make it more clear for people that they ought to be doing this, that, and the other thing. And I think we will have some reforms. It's hard to know how much will occur, but I think there's a lot of interest in passing some additional reforms this session.
Let's go to Adam Ebbin is sponsoring legislation in the upper chamber, the senator from Northern Virginia, basically decriminalizing possession of under 1 ounce of marijuana. Does that have legs?
I really don't think it has a lot of legs. Certainly doesn't have legs in the House. I think it's going to be very difficult for that bill to get out, independent of the arguments. There are pretty strong arguments for this. I mean, we're making criminals out of folks who are possessing a very small amount of this of this stuff. And it's one thing if people are dealing marijuana and drugs to youngsters, and it's another thing that if they get caught with a very small amount. But I don't think it's got much of a chance of passing.
Leader Toscano, you said it's going to run into trouble in the House. Which side of the aisle?
I think both sides. I don't think it gets out of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much support for this right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I love Senator Ebbin. He was my mentor when I was in the House. He's a wonderful legislator and works very hard. I don't want to, I'm just saying that I don't see much of a chance of it passing.
Payday lending. Any change there? I know every time we go in this session, there's a group that wants to rein in payday lenders in Virginia, especially over the internet, cap the interest or lower the interest, saying that they prey on the people in the lower social income bracket, also military servicemen. Do you see anything happening with that particular issue?
Well, when I first got there in 2006, this was a huge issue, and we, had bills year after year, and major controversy. You don't see that level of controversy now that you did several years ago because we made some changes. We didn't eliminate the practice, but we did make some changes. I think, from my own personal view, we ought to tighten up more. But whether something can happen in this General Assembly session I'm doubtful of it. The Senate has often been the one that has prevented that from occurring, and
right.
I don't think you're going to see much change. You might see a little change, but you're not going to be able to eliminate these these payday lenders. I think it's a terrible problem everywhere in the state, but particularly in your area, where you see them sometimes. You go down a major street and you see them on every corner, and they prey on people who don't have much money. They prey on our military veterans and members of our military, and I don't think it's really an appropriate thing to be doing, but we've had a really hard time reining them in.
It seems like I always ask this question. We go into every session. There's always going to be a couple people fighting it, trying to get the interest down, but they have a powerful lobby. They spend a lot of money in the General Assembly, as you know, and they're highly profitable, and we don't seem to get a lot of change there. But I'm 100% behind you on that. I think they have to be reined in, because in my area we see it all the time, and there'll be 5 and 6 of them within a mile. It's just really an unfortunate situation when people get into that cycle, Mr. Leader, and they can't get out. We're out of time. I want to thank Minority Leader of the Democratic Caucus of the House of Delegates, David Toscano, for being with us today. And Mr. Leader, again, we wish you and your family a fabulous Christmas, a wonderful holiday, and as we get into the General Assembly, we'll certainly have you back on regularly. So thank you.
Glad to do it. Same to you and your family, and get out there and do that shopping.
I know. I got to get that shopping done.